Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this Tech Talk session. We're going to be discussing today about how to build an incident response plan that really works. We've done a bunch of these Tech Talks. I am Joe Raffinelli here. I am a Technical Solutions Director here at Microsoft. Microsoft, at our core, we are a customized software development shop. However, we have a powerful combination of business expertise and technical expertise as well. We do our best to provide clients with the best in class services, specifically for enterprise services. I'm here again with Scott and Todd. They have 25 years cybersecurity in the cybersecurity industry. They've helped countless people or companies from the bad apples or bad actors out there for threat management. What we're doing, why we're doing these sessions, is to really to offer like practical solutions, right? So insights towards improving cybersecurity in your workshop. As usual, I want to thank these gentlemen so much for their time. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to have a series of questions to start us off. And what we'll do at the end, like we typically do, is we'll have a chat questions that we'll go through, and we'll get real-time answers. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with Scott. So Scott, what are the key components of an effective incident response plan?
Yeah, Joe. So a good incident response plan should be, a full-on document, which is your playbook for, getting through an event, a security event or an incident. It should consist of a well-defined set of phases, whereas you have, the preparation phase, which is phase one, where you define your teams and you're executing, processes and procedures. And then you move into the part, the second part would be how you're going to handle it, right? How you're going to identify the issue, what's going to, what caused the issue, all of those types of things, and then do an assessment of the damage or the impact on the business and the technologies that could be affected. And then it's really important to report along the way, right? Document and log the issues that are found, continue on with your forensics as you find various pieces of evidence or potential breakpoints to fix, to report and log on those to the proper members of the team and make sure that the team all knows what they're doing, right? So, you have a security incident response team, you have somebody that's the leader, you have somebody from the networking team, somebody from maybe legal, the policy teams, have that team very well defined. And then again, of course, there's members of management, right, all the way up to the executive level, which are defined so that everybody knows who to call, when to call them, why to call them, so that the process flows smoothly, because, it's already a crisis and you need a solid playbook so that everybody can kind of remain calm, know what they're doing, get through this thing without a lot of anxiety. How you contain it, how, what to do, what eradication steps to take, A, immediately, and B, then maybe waiting for down the road, because sometimes when you do some sort of eradication, it could have an adverse long-term, more damaging effect. So you need to, kind of have all these things spelled out, laid out in a nice documented plan, and then how you're going to recover, right? What's your recovery procedures? What disaster recovery mechanisms do you have in place? Who does the recovery? When are recovery items, brought back up? And, just as an example, when you have a ransomware, a lot of times the ransomware has really destroyed the environment, and it also possibly got into the backups or storage or other areas of your disaster recovery planning and mechanisms. So you want to, kind of have a good recovery plan to know, should part of my disaster recovery be quarantined, or is it clean, so that you can vet it out? Or if there's a question, do I scan it before I release it to the environment? And just all of those things happen. And then once the event's over, you're going to find, a lot of times you're going to know how it happened. You're going to find out how it happened. You're going to go through it. You may get legal involved, whatever the case may be. There's always lessons learned, right? What could I have done better? What worked really? And then what could we have done better? Or what didn't we think of, because I guarantee, the best laid of plans, you're going to be 99.9% there, but there's that 0.1% where something happened you didn't think about. Something happened because, honestly, the hackers and the bad guys out there are, they're upgrading their mechanisms and attack mechanisms and their attack spectrums daily. So, we can't think of the things that we can't see and what we don't know. And then test your plan, test it at least annually. I like to ask clients to do it, biannually or even quarterly if they have, high levels of compliance such as HIPAA or, some of the higher compliancy levels, financial compliancy. Um, Test the plan, see how it works, get buy-in from your team, and then make modifications accordingly, so that when the next event happens, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, at least you've got a good, you've thought it through and you've corrected your mistakes along the way. It's always a learning process, and it's always a process that can and should be improved.
Yes, absolutely. If you don't, it's the old saying, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. So, well said there, Scott. I appreciate that. Sounds like a pretty extensive document. I'm gonna move on. So maybe Todd will do this one. What are the key steps for containing and eradicating a cybersecurity incident to prevent further damage?
Sure, I'll take that one, Joe. As Scott said here, having that incident response plan is key. So if an organization that's going through an event doesn't have one of those plans, they're just going to be winging it on the fly. They're going to miss things. They're not going to have the correct items in place for communication. So having that IR plan, having it tested, making sure it's readily available to your entire team, not just the staff that's going to be working through the event, but you want that plan available to everybody. That way, as the event goes on, somebody can look in that plan and see, okay, am I supposed to be doing anything? Who should I be contacting if I see something else come up? So having those critical team members have that plan, and then having the majority of your staff having access to that plan so that they know what's going on. And then as you start to get into that plan, everybody that's in your response team, that's outlined in that plan, they need to know their roles down to a T. They need to know who to report to, who should they be communicating with, who's going to handle communications to customers, the public, internal employees. So all of that stuff needs to be laid out in that plan so that everybody knows exactly what they're doing. You have the right person for the right job responding, and the practice that Scott spoke to. You want to make sure that that's a well-oiled machine, that those people can do those tasks quickly, easily, and efficiently during that response. And then as you dig into that event, you need to get rid of any offensive components. That's one of the critical things when you're responding is how quickly can you respond, and get rid of those infected components, whether that's workstations, servers, routers, whatever the case might be. You need to be able to shut those down, get them offline, get traffic rerouted, get your responses out. And then all while doing this, you need to be taking notes and filling out your incident response report. Those notes are critical for doing that, lesson learned portion that Scott was talking about. Having timelines in your notes and just keeping track of everything you've done that you observed, screenshots of any configuration changes you might have found. All of that evidence is important for doing a deep dive analysis and then readjusting your incident response plan in the end. And if you don't have all of that stuff laid out, your response time is going to be slower, and could drastically increase, the extent of the damage and how long it then takes to recover. A quicker responding team is going to get an incident in the early stages and possibly be able to take care of it before it becomes a major event. A slow moving team or unplanned and a little incident could turn into a very large event.
No, absolutely. It's amazing all the stuff that we got to do now to get away from these bad actors. It sounds like a lot of work for people to do, and we definitely appreciate what you guys do to keep everybody safe from these people. Okay, so let me move on here. So how do you determine the roles and responsibilities within the incident response team?
I'll take that one, Joe. Take a look at your organizational structure, right? So know your organization, your locations, and then you start to identify the proper, members of management and executive teams, and key network and security individuals, your IT guys. And then the folks that are that are actually gonna be doing the remediation work, right? Or the going through the incident and starting to get the work done to get this thing cleaned up and eradicated and get the business back on its feet. And then knowing and defining how and when to use third-party resources is really critical. And that could be anything from a hardware vendor, your server vendor, or your software vendors, or somebody like Microsoft, that your application consultant, application vendors. And then there's legal people, right? There's lawyers, and there's the police and the FBI, and all these different legal reporting resources. You really need to know who and when to bring in at the proper times, and make sure that that's spelled out, for everybody that has a role in the plan. But then, as Todd said too, the whole company should know that this plan exists and where it's at, right? It's just good practice. And so, when you're picking the folks for your roles, you just want to make sure you've thought through everything, right? You might have to go to the legal authorities, you may not. And obviously, it's going to go to the top level. It's going to the C-suite. If an incident's sizable and it puts the business down, and the business isn't processing, and you're not selling product or doing your services, whatever your business, industry is, you're going to be hurting, and that's going to hit at every level of the company. So that should be spelled out and identified, within parts of your plan. And you may not have your CEO executing the plan, but he certainly should be reported to in the proper channel, just like anything else you do within your organization. This is a business process. It's a negative one when there's a negative event, but it could have a very positive outcome.
Right.
And if with the right roles established, it will.
Absolutely. Again, well said. I appreciate that. Folks just got to pay attention to all this stuff. Okay. How does the incident response plan integrate with other existing security policies and procedures?
Great question. I'll take that one too. So it's tightly integrated, obviously, with your disaster recovery plan, right? I know we're here talking about incident response plan, but your disaster recovery plan is just as mission critical, because it is a big part of your recovery. When you have an incident, right? It tells you where your backups are. It tells you how you could possibly have resources replicated, such that when your master data center is down and maybe a second data center kicks in, there's all of those things that are established in the disaster recovery plan, right? So it integrates very heavily with disaster recovery, but it also integrates with network policies and procedures, cybersecurity policies and procedures, your guidance from some of the industry, compliances that your industry may need to absorb, such as HIPAA or PCI or SOX. So, it integrates very heavily with a lot of just all of the policies and procedures, not only technical, but also operationally and from a compliance stance.
Yeah, that's key, right? Making sure everything's integrated. So it's maybe even a document that works well with other documents. So that's a very important point. Okay, I have my last question before we turn it over to chat. Maybe I'll give it to Todd here. How does the plan ensure a timely and effective recovery process to restore affected systems and data?
So on the data side of things, you're looking at your DR plan, like Scott mentioned.
Hmm.
You've got to have that DR plan. You have to make sure that you're doing your backups, your monitoring's in place, and somebody's verifying all of that as part of your DR. So now you've got a full DR strategy that is tested. We'd like to see them at a minimum tested quarterly. Make sure somebody's manually getting in there doing system restores or full on DR tests in your DR environment. Critical for data restoration. And then your incident response has to, lay out how you're going to step through everything. So what you end up doing in your incident response plan, You have, the procedures laid out on how you're going to handle things. And so now you have all the procedures in your IR plan that basically become a nice playbook. And so now you have a playbook that says we're going to do steps A, B, C, D, E in order, and then once we have these resolved, we're going to, move on to the next step. So it becomes a very nice playbook where you can just step through things. And it's critical to have that, because in the moment you forget about doing certain things, or it could be a very stressful moment for the people that are involved in the incident. There's a lot on the line. People are worried about, their losing customer data, what this is going to mean to the company. Is it going to be a huge impact? Are you going to be able to get all your data recovered? So having all of that stuff laid out is very helpful, because it really lowers, that stress level as you're going through the incident. If that you have your testing in place, and you just tested it, a month ago, and your offsite DR is ready to come up, as you're going through that response plan, in the back of your head, like, hey, our DR plan's fully tested now. I know I can resort to that as a last, ditch effort. And now you're not as stressed while you're running through that incident response playbook. So it all comes down to plan, test, and keep doing that as much as you can. Um, Going through those steps and doing, them to make sure everything's working smoothly is the best option that you have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just want to
Go ahead.
chime in on that because
Yeah,
Todd there's the human factor in this, Joe, right? And and we've been around so many clients that have, brought us in to help them, through a situation, as they're executing a well-documented plan, they still bring us in at times. And there's a level of panic that you just can't even, you can't even um, understand until you're in that crisis mode. And as Todd said, when they turn around and they say my disaster plan, as Todd did, did very well explaining, when that plan's in front of them, they seem a lot calmer. They're like, I just tested this. It's here. Don't worry. It's going to take time to get it back, but I'm good. If that panic level, anything you can do to remove that panic level is going to, set you straight and get this thing back up, in a more organized, clean fashion.
absolutely. Obviously, prevention is key, but in the absence of that, because of all the bad apples out there, right? You guys hit on something very, very good in terms of the stress levels. When you have to start something from scratch and you're having that problem, it just makes it so much tougher. But if you know your steps and you know what to do and you've tested it, you're going to be in a much better place. So I appreciate you guys saying that. Thank you, guys. So what I wanted to do was we talked a lot about the incident response document or plan, I should say. What I was hoping to do is why don't we show the folks, what it looks like, what it might look like, an example. So if we can go ahead and start sharing screen here. Okay. Do you guys see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So what I want to do is just give everybody a little flavor, a level of detail that comes with all of this.
Yeah, and if I might, Joe, just kind of explain a little bit. We're on the
Yeah.
table of contents here.
Right.
Um, so, so I'll just explain. We, for the sake of time, just kind of what we talked about what's in the plan, but the table of contents kind of spells it out a little further. It discusses classification. So, for the novice or the folks that don't live in this type of world every single day, for the executives, this kind of gives everybody an overview. And then it shows the definition of your team, all the contacts and the definition of the teams and roles and responsibilities of a response team, the preparation phases, and then a good incident response framework should be done in phases, right? You have the preparation phase where you identify, your teams and where your DR plans are and what it is that you need. You do all that identification of the tools and procedures that are going to be used within the incident response plan itself. And then, you're going to look at how you contain and what the intelligence is of the network and, your team and how to contain the event, and then also eradicate, when to eradicate, what to eradicate, what to look for, what may need eradication, how to identify items that could possibly be salvaged are also spoken to in the eradication. That's a don't eradicate, obviously, right? So, and then you have your okay, we're in the recovery phase. What is the recovery? It's not, Todd did a great job talking about the technology side of it, but what else is in the recovery, right? Maybe there's an office down, because of the event. So you've got to communicate with those folks and make sure that, they're part of the planning. They've got to come back online. And then, as we spoke to the lessons learned, the lessons learned section in this gives you an area where you can kind of think through it, talk about it after the fact. It gives you a structure for that lessons learned meeting. So you have that, it is also structured. So when you walk away from this and say, okay, this just happened, and you have your reports, the lesson learned, tells you what reports you should bring to the table, what that meeting should look like, potentially, how you can improve your plan for the next, readiness for the next, event. And then again, the steps of plan testing, right? So the lessons learned kind of coincides with the plan testing. You plan test, and then you might find something broken. That's actually a lesson learned too. So, they're all in here, and it kind of spells this out, and it lays it out pretty in depth. I don't know, Joe, could you possibly, just to kind of and this, a template like this, and Microsoft has this template, and we make it available to our customers, and we can also come out and help consult and get this environmentally specific, but this is pretty turnkey. I don't know if you could maybe just go to the CERT team to show,
I will.
This template, and a good template should have all of the forms, right? You should have all of your contact information, and that should be for your CERT team and your vendors. And, and it's a 38-page document, but it's an easy to understand, easy to identify, easy to read, and easy to follow. And so, a good plan is laid out, structured well. And then, if you go down farther, we even advise that you have a section in here for your special compliances, such as, if you have HIPAA compliance, or if you're more in the logistics industry, you may fall under TSA compliance. So, a good template should have all of that built into it when you get down to towards the end of the document. You should have a section in there for your compliance, and that's where all of your compliances should lie, right? And when Joe gets down there, you'll see what I'm talking about.
There we go.
There you go. So this is basically speaking to all the compliances, right? And it's going to have links to those government sites. Like for an example here, this references the TSA, and it's going to take you to TSA guidelines, right? If this is HIPAA, High Trust, PCI, it might take you, to some of those agencies. And it's very important that you have all this information readily available and clickable, digitally clickable, so that as they're going through things and bringing things back up, they're bringing things back up, under the structure of the compliance needs that the industry demands of their business.
I love the detail in this document. Hopefully folks can get the idea about how much detail is in here, but absolutely. Thank you for going through all that. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go get some questions from the chat, from the folks in the audience, and we'll give it a minute here. Okay, first question. How are lessons learned integrated into the plan following an incident? Good question.
I'll take that one, Joe.
Thank you.
So after your incident, everybody's made their notes in their incident response plan. Now all that data can be evaluated. So you get your incident response team back together and say, okay, the event's now over. Let's go through all of our notes, all the information we collected, the step-by-step of what happened during this event, and, lay out what went well, so that we know that, that stuff was good in our plan. And then let's look at what didn't go well. Was there something that we were unplanned for, or something that took longer than what we thought? Maybe we thought we could do, a full DR restore at our secondary site in, 12 hours, and it took us 24 hours. Why did it take us twice as long to do that as we thought it was going to? Were there steps that we missed in our planning? So now that we've done that, and let's say we find that it took longer, to do that restore, our response team did everything they were supposed to in order, but the DR portion of that didn't go well. So now we know we can update our DR plan and correct that. And then there's always going to be something that you're going to re-add into your, incident response plan that's specific to your organization or specific to the type of event that you went through. Internal events are different than, events from external attack. And so as you progress through a different event, there's always going to be some lesson learned, right? It's always that way in life. And you just got to update that plan. That plan isn't meant to stay rigid. That plan is meant to be flexible and updated, and reviewed and tested. And so, getting the whole team back together after, the response is done, the incident is over, and making those analysis is a very important part of all of that work.
Absolutely. Lessons learned for any project, anything you do is always a great step. So yes, definitely well said. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, what types of cybersecurity events should the incident response plan cover?
I'll take that one. It should cover the contingencies, as you go in and you're creating your incident response plan. And then as you go through the lessons learned and all of the exercises of testing, it should cover any contingencies that have already happened or contingencies that you may know happen or could happen to your business. Your own network, and sometimes you have to, set things up within your network to allow functionality of an application. You've done a mitigation control, yet that could be a vulnerability. So, knowing all of the contingencies within your own organization, whether they're technical or operational, again, and spelling those out in your incident response plan, right? It should include, and you should consider, what types of incidents can happen and, are just, common standard everyday things that, every business needs to worry about, right? Hackers and ransomware and network security incidents and breach of data and compromise to hardware and theft of hardware and the loss of, a mobile device, somebody traveling in the airport and they rush to the, from their seat to board the plane and they, left their phone sitting on the charger and didn't realize it. All of those things expose the company, right? So you have to think about those contingencies and all of those should be considered for your incident response plan, plus anything that specific to your business.
There's a lot going on there. Thank you for that. Okay, got another question here. What is the process for regularly testing and updating the incident response plan?
Yeah, I think I said this earlier.
Yeah,
So, we should at a minimum test it annually, right? I
yeah,
prefer biannually, quarterly. If you're in a high stress, like a lot of the pharmaceuticals have this thing called URAC. It's a compliance statute and standard. If your compliance standards are really tough, then you might want to think about doing it quarterly, right? Just to make sure that you're staying in compliance, because those fines they'll hurt, so you're better off to spend a half a day getting through your RIR plan 4 times a year than, absorbing some sort of a compliance fine or compliance penalty. A good testing scenario should, get the whole team together, discuss as you're going through it, make sure that you have a backup to the backup, meaning, not just a technical backup, but somebody on the team that may not be available, or is multitasked in their set of role responsibilities, having a backup for them, and or maybe a helper. All of those things will be very, very useful parts of the test and processes within the testing.
no, absolutely. Testing is so key to all this stuff. Again, just a lot to do, not a lot to remember to do. Okay, very good. Very good response here. Okay, anything else, folks? 3 great questions. Do we have a fourth? Let's see. Give it a couple seconds here. Okay, I think we're going to close out the session. I want to thank Scott and Todd for their expertise, right? You guys are the SME subject matter experts. Definitely would want you guys on my team. If when it comes to this preventing the bad apples from getting to us. So you guys really show a lot of you show a lot of knowledge in terms of what's going on in the world. So for the audience, we're glad we had the chance to show you guys the incident response example, right? So these guys can put together something like that, in a template form, or if we can go into more details if you want as well. That's something these guys can definitely do for you. Um, my information is there for contacting us. If anything here resonates with you guys, audience wise, let us know. Contact me. We can get these guys back on the phone. But for now, I want to thank everybody for their time and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye now.